want to talk about these UAPs and what they mean for humanity and our species, especially in our time where it's kind of like Game of Thrones, we're all at each other's throats, and there is something much more important, something much bigger in the horizon that's often not talked about, right? These UFOs is, I think, the term that should be used for any time before the release of these videos. Now that these videos have been released, and I feel like the CIA is slowly releasing this information just to get the public more used to the idea of UFO, because I think that the real situation here is that we have been really arrogant in thinking these movie descriptions of UFOs, take me to your leader, as if they would give a fuck, they would care about our existence. They're probably here for some other worldly reason, something that we can probably not even understand. I have been a little bit surprised as to why this is not the main topic of conversation on all channels right now. Because we are stuck in a media dystopia, and we need to basically navigate all of this garbage. And right now, what is really important, what seems to be really important, is something out of the world. They have, if you haven't heard, for the last couple of years, and this is all over mainstream media now, this is not some conspiracy theory, for the last couple of years, fighter pilots have been engaging on a daily basis with these aliens. I'm just going to say aliens, because that's still an apt word. I think the unidentified aerial phenomenon is a good description. However, they're not necessarily aerial. Right? I think they should just be called unidentified interdimensional phenomena, because it's clear that these beings are disappearing from our time and space and coming back in another dimension.
And the most peculiar thing was the way in which it moved, because it almost felt as if it would disappear and appear a few meters ahead of itself.
This is less like Columbus sailing to the New World, and more like we are an ant on a Mobius strip, wondering why everything is straight, when the situation could be much more 3D, much more interdimensional than we had once perceived.
What I thought was maybe the world's going to end. Maybe they're telling us the world's going to end.
Why do you think they might want us to be scared?
Because because we don't look after the planet, the area properly.
Mm-hmm. And Melanie, is this an idea that you have had before, that we don't look after the planet properly in the air, or did this idea come to you when you had this experience?
When I had this experience.
Mm-hmm. And how did that idea come to you from this experience? This is a little hard, but try to be with me here, okay? How did this idea come to you when you had this experience?
I just felt all horrible inside.
You felt horrible. At what point did you feel that? When you saw the craft, or when you got home at night? Or
when I got home.
You had that horrible feeling when you got home?
Yes.
And say more about that horrible feeling, Lisa. What was it like?
it was like in the world, all the trees will just go down and there will be no air and people will be dying.
And those thoughts came to you, had you had those thoughts before this experience?
No.
No. And how did those thoughts come to you? Did they come to you from the craft or from...
From the man.
The man. And the man, did the man say those things to you? How did he get that across to you?
Well, he never said anything. It's just that the face is the eyes.
What was the sense you got from those eyes?
He was interested.
They describe these experiences or these events like a person talks about something that has happened to them. And when you're talking with a psychotic who's telling you something and it's a delusion and you feel that it really didn't happen, I can tell. I mean, I know this is something that person wants me to believe, or they're frightened, or they're distorting reality in some way. There's nothing like that here. These are people of sound mind, by and large, telling me something that's very... They know that I might think they're crazy, and so they're a little concerned about telling me, and they're very full of questioning themselves and doubt, and I mean, and then they describe something very real and intense, a light or something happened to their body, or it's the whole quality of the way they talk about it is the way a person talks about experience that happened to them.
Now, we are learning this through quantum physics, through different mediums, through different media, and even perhaps many of our New Age spirituality, which in the wisdom, I differentiate New Age from wisdom of the old age by just wondering whether there's a hint of neoliberalism in the ideology of spirituality, and whether it is truly going about these rituals in a respectful manner. Regardless, some of our spiritual encounters with extra-dimensional beings can be thought of as a way of helping us understand us, the mosquitoes that we are in this universe, compared to how we are ultimately perhaps not even worthy of study for these beings, because they already know, or something they know already. Otherwise, one of the questioners in the interviewers, these massive amounts of information that I'm watching and reading because of this UAP stuff. And even before that, I've been always interested in reading books since I was a kid about aliens. I've always just tried to, say that this is kind of just like how I do with my spirituality. I qualify what I'm saying as if this is not a scientific thing, or we don't have all the information on it. Like spirituality is the same way. It's genuine, authentic spiritual talk is, starting with one of wonder. UAPs are something that I think we have to wrap our head around. Now people like Graham Hancock and these types of thinkers that are really on the fringe of academia need to be listened to a little bit more. Or even people like Terence McKenna, who has been exploring psychology, the depths of psychology. I can tell you that dreams can also be quite helpful. Our DNA is ancient, and when you have dreams or some sort of DMT experience that can connect you with that ancient DNA knowledge, you can see that we are indeed much, much older than the 5,000 years of ape-like civilization that we created. We are apes. We are hominoids. We are two-feeted. We evolved to hunt deer. We evolved to run. We have to see each other and our society in this sense. We look at situation, our situation too much within this 5,000 to 10,000 year old time frame of civilization. We tribalize based on these 5,000, 10,000 years of civilization, when really we should really be respecting all of our ancestors and looking much deeper into the million years that we are. I don't want to get too new into the star beings, people from. We could be extraterrestrials ourselves. We could be a DNA that came from somewhere else. Just like perhaps the Earth was inseminated by a meteor, right? And this is what started life. These are just conjectures. I'm just trying to get my head on straight and wonder and think about why nobody's talking about this as much as they should be. This should be the #1 trending topic. I'm not sure if AUP is the #1 trending topic right now, but it definitely should be. We should start normalizing it. We should be asking our governments to release more information, because these are humans too. Our politicians, the head of the CIA, all of these guys, they have to make a decision. Is the public ready for this kind of? And we're not showing the CIA that we are ready for it, right? Unfortunately, they are the ones with the information, or as much information as possible, and we have to release that information into the public. Not only because it will make our situation, we will understand what our situation really is, that we are really Earthlings, and we shouldn't be fighting between China and the US and all this crap, and we shouldn't be spending money on fighting each other. We should be spending that money, those trillions and trillions of dollars, on this time travel, extraterrestrial research, and figuring out what the fuck we're doing on this planet, because the only thing we're doing right now is reiterating the tribal translations of the last 10,000 years war. We still haven't healed from our traumas of war. I'm Babylonian. I can attest to this. It's in my DNA. Thousands, hundreds of years of civilizations. I've had dreams of going off into battle. My ancient self, my manarchist perspective of history. We need to heal from years and years of war, of violence. We need to come together. We need to see these extraterrestrials as a sign that if humans don't get together and solve great issues like COVID, COVID is a test for future pandemics. We are instead destroying the planet. We are creating microplastics that are affecting our biomes. We are attacking our bacterial cultures with fast food chains that destroy the environment and destroy the soil that is our food. Topsoil is disappearing. Ancient languages are disappearing. The multitude of ways of living are being destroyed by neoliberalism. This one culture, English, Spanish, Mandarin, destruction of multiple ways of thinking for the efficacy of production of more and more plastic, more and more of this ideal of profit, which may or may not be a sign of true progress. Profit for what? Progress towards what? Elon Musk, for example, used some of this type of rhetoric of next-worldly that we all have some connection to. We all want to have some sort of community, earthling community. We all want to progress to the next level, whatever that may be. Not all of us, but many of us. This UAP incident, I've gone from being a green, we should spend our money on environmentalism, guide to, oh, we really need to start pushing towards some sort of environmental yet progress-driven motive that doesn't undermine the long-term well-being of humanity. Because right now what we do is we sell the future short through our democratic means, unfortunately. We have to really question whether democracy is the way forward. I think it should be. I think that human beings, ape human beings, we are social beings, and we need to find ways of translating our particular tribal ways of being in a way that connects with every other tribe, but doesn't cop out to some sort of colonizing neoliberal ideal. We need to create social cultures that can come together rather than try to colonize each other and ethnically cleanse one another to become like one of us, to be tolerant of our differences. We are like snakes in that Rick and Morty episode, fighting each other over what color snake is the best. This kind of ridiculousness when we're just stupid apes. We're really, really dumb apes. And we don't recognize that sometimes. And I think that this UAP incident, we need to start recognizing this. When we look at another type of person across the street, they might not look the same as us. This is what I want to really talk about. Levinas talks about the encounter with a stranger, how you can have with this stranger a ontological, you don't know what ontology means. Ontology is the study of the presence. Study of presence. My breathing, my heartbeat, birds, presence, film. Now I'm getting more into deconstruction, which is looking at this film and realizing the language at play, and wondering about whether it's going to be used to convey in what I really want to say, or how it will be commensurate with the person listening. So that's ontology and kind of a deconstruction at the same time. Deconstruction of the language, the medium by which I'm communicating with you at this present moment now. This ontology is where Levinas can find a way of connecting different cultures and different beings. And we can even extend this to, this is more of a modern perspective, we can extend this to be more, include other non-beings. Like when I look into, well, you're not supposed to look into the horse's eye, but I think for Levinas' case, it's really important because I can still kind of imagine a horse. Well, I can still anthropomorphize the horse, and there is still a barrier, and there is a gatekeeping, but there's still a mammalian connection between me and dog and the horse. I cuddle the dog. Dog understands cuddling. Dog understands happy. Horses understand how these beings understand each other, which we're both feelings. Right? And you can see where I'm going. Where would this Levinasian ontological connection, even with animals, even with the Nazi, right? That's what Levinas was really talking about when he's writing. He's talking about the connection between two would-be enemies, the Palestinian and the Israeli, when they live across each other. This disconnect it's possible to heal. Hopefully. Not with our present neoliberal modification of emotional labor, it's not. To be honest, what I was talking about before is that individualism, we have religions that are much more powerful than psychological motivations. So, for example, intersectionality becomes a tool of neoliberalism rather than a way of dismantling the neoliberal worldview. So we have religions more powerful than any of our ideologies, and that we all operate in. Right? We all have to say, well, if you're going to be watching this, or if you're going to be talking about this, you have to provide me with some value. It's kind of a neoliberal cost-benefit analysis of our time and space, which invades this ontological categories, and I shouldn't say categories, this ontological presence. It invades that, makes it a cost-benefit analysis, makes it subject to a truth verification by the market, by the marketplace. The public sphere becomes invaded by the marketplace. The public sphere being the sphere of language, the sphere of what I'm trying to perhaps create right now in this form of media, trying to make this media, seeing this media as a form of public domain, seeing this form as a public domain. Regardless, we cannot have those, let's say, because the argument there is whether we can actually heal or not. The Levinas, perhaps, there is a difficulty there, whether we can or not heal. But there's a good 50% of the literature that says, we can heal from that. And another 50% that says we have to cut off toxic impulses from our lives. This is the very important conversation that we cannot heal our interpersonal relationships with one another. How can we deal with Israeli-Palestine conflict when people just straight up dislike each other for historical burdens? We need to heal from our historical burdens, from these wars that invade our history, that when you shake, you shake. That could be your trauma, that could be the trauma of your grandparents, that could be an ancient trauma, 100-year-old trauma. That's what it means to heal from our DNA trauma. Those information is in our DNA. And if you do the spiritual work, because honestly, this kind of thing is really only a spiritual event. There's not an event, it's a spiritual phenomenon. Maybe there could be some spiritual events in there that could help shape a narrative. But I'm not even talking about narrative. I'm talking about ontologies, right before narrative. Right? We cannot have that connection. If it's already difficult to have that connection with the human who disagrees with us, the mammalian creature who's still an earthling, or other earthlings who we have DNA connections with, this evolution that we do have a DNA connection with. As earthlings, even there, this Levinasian potential space for connection is rare. So that's how can we have that with an alien species that is 1,000 times more advanced than us? It's not even like an ant and a human, because the ant and the human, the ant that's playing with the Mobius strip, and the human and the earthling that's on the other ant earthling that's on the Mobius strip. Yeah, we could use that as an analogy, but at the end of the day, the paper, the ant, and the human all come from the same place, this earth. And so all of this is an anthropological, not in a human sense, but an earthological bias, if that's a word for that, an anthropological in a bigger sense, of Earth bias towards everything I'm saying right now. Because we are truly speaking of interdimensional beings. And I'll tell you my experience with interdimensional beings was in this Terence McKenna experience that I've undertaken. I was shot through time and space. First, everything froze and became glass and shattered and went down into nothingness, like that movie, Under the Skin. And then I was shot through time and space. And while I was flying through space and time, this like colorful interdimensional space, but blackness at the end, there were all of these interdimensional ghosts and spirits and beings. Some of them more with shape, some of them less, some of them more shadowy, some of them less, some of them I can see clearly, some of them less. Multitudes of species that I've never seen before, that I can't even conjure up, before shooting straight into what I call this temple. It was basically a flower of life ball that was like a temple. It was like a planet, and all of these pillars, kind of like this temple in Mashhad. And there, I actually didn't remember this part of the story until much later, when I went to a specific museum, the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, that has this structure, this flower of life structure in the middle of the building. And I was telling my friend about this dream, this experience that I've had, and I said to him, wait a second, I wasn't here. I was exactly somewhere that was exactly like this flower of life. I mean, yeah, the flower of life is everywhere, but this was like a big structure of it, and it really reminded me of my dream. And then I remembered that I did have a breakthrough, is what people call this, and I did visit this temple. That temple is a powerful place where there's this spirit of oneness. And we have to work on creating something like that. We have to create rituals by which we can come together and see ourselves as one. Because right now, the only rituals that are available to us are the ones that every institution, from psychology to the judiciary to the economics, is reinforcing these rituals of individualism, these rituals of capitalism, and these rituals of materialism, valuing people by their ability to exploit surplus labor, valuing people based on pseudo imagery of what valuable means. For example, we need to heal from history and stop resorting to this camp mentality. The camp, which is the epicenter of our existence. The camp lies, this is Agamben, the camp lies at the border of our society and is in fact the center of our society. It creates a culture, from our prisons to the refugee camps to all the other places that resemble a camp, where the fate of bodies is in the hands of guards or officials, and they decide for your life because you were unable to participate in the system in some way or another. Perhaps you're mentally challenged, and so they put you with all these other peoples who are in a similar situation as you. Perhaps they're mentally challenged, or perhaps it was just effervescence, a series of mistakes that brought you into this place that is more or less a downward spiral that gives you a camp mentality And this camp mentality, if you're in the prison, you're a guard, you absorb this camp mentality as a guard and you take it home and you bring it back into this society. And if you're a police officer, you also have a camp mentality that you bring back and you create in this society. Because the police officer is always dealing with people on the environs of society, and that's mentally challenging. It's a lot of emotional labor as a police officer. Emotional labor that you do not have the skills to deal with. And even if you want to deal with it, the way you deal with it is through the commercialization and commodification of emotional labor. So in fact, even the ways of dealing with what capitalism has created, is capitalistic. So this kind of catch-22 situation with regards to how people can feel. So we need to start seeing ourselves not in competition with one another, but seeing ourselves as ants kind of do. Ants have this powerful collective drive, and they can do collective action in a way that we should learn from, not to mimic so that we don't mimic totalitarian styles of governance, so that we can have this kind of ceremonial democracy where we all take responsibility because we want to. Instead, what we've created is this world where social capital is tied to your complacency in society. So you have to say the right thing. You cannot, for example, if you disagree with a certain socio-political motive, you can't, if you disagree, then you become part of another camp. There is no unified place, even on the left, even in politics, because everything is just commodification. Everything is, even our politicians are paid off. We can't even think for 2 seconds, for what we're about to, how can we solve this problem, right? I'm not talking about aliens. I'm just talking about COVID and global warming. How can we solve our problems? How can we come together as a global community? We were supposed to have the UN, but now everything has become a site of war, even the United Nations, because the United Nations has taken up this intersectional perspective, and because of that, it's actually alienated people that just don't agree with it. So, and of course, the United Nations is, of course, in many ways, a tool of neoliberal capitalism, straight up, regardless of this intersectional politics that we're dealing with today. These unidentified aerial phenomena are incredibly important for us to think about them, for us to wrap our heads around, for us to create some sort of plans, some sort of rituals that we can talk to them or We were incredibly arrogant to think that in those movies that we made about aliens, that these aliens would come down and say, take us to your leader. They are aliens that don't even have... We were incredibly arrogant to think
They're just
that
another speck
in those
We're
movies
just
that we
another
made about
speck in
aliens,
the
that these
universe. Not
aliens
even
would come down
enough time can have to
and say,
study.
take
The
us to
universe
your
itself
leader.
is this
They
massive
are
information,
aliens that
and
don't even have, that we are just another
who
speck.
knows if
We're just
these
another speck.
all these different
There's
types of
not
aliens have
enough time we can have to study. The universe
empathies
itself
like
is
we do,
this
or
massive information.
ways of thinking like we do. They could have totally, completely different ways of thinking, especially if they are multidimensional, interdimensional.
Who knows if these all these
It
different types of
both
aliens have
opens up a lot of possibilities,
empathies, like
and it should
or
frighten us.
ways of
This
thinking,
should
like
be
they
frightening.
could have totally
In
different
fact, I
ways,
think that's
especially
why
if they are
it's not
multidimensional.
public, it's not being talked about all the time, it's
It
not being studied.
both opens
All
up
of our resources
a
are,
lot of
you know,
possibilities,
if academia was
and
truly
it should frighten us.
this thing,
This should be frightening.
truly a source of
I
knowledge,
think that's why
you know, all of
it's
us
not public.
academics, we would
It's not being
focus
talked
our
about all the
resources
time. It's not being studied. All of our resources are not enough. If academia was truly
this topic. I'm
this
wondering,
thing,
where is Neil deGrasse Tyson right
truly
now?
a source of knowledge, all of us
Talking about these
academics,
UAPs. I mean, 5 years ago he was
focus
just like,
our resources,
10,000, 5,000, all these billions
some
and
sort
billions
of
of stars. How can we
wrapping our heads
He
around
was
this
talking,
topic.
you know, he's
I'm
always
wondering,
open to the
where is
possibility.
Neil deGrasse Tyson right
He
now?
never thought about actual
Talking about these
aliens, right? We need
UAPs. I
something
mean, 5 years ago,
We
he
need
was
more
just like,
creative people.
10,000, 5,000, all these
Because his job
billions
as a
and
scientist,
billions of
as a
stars. How can we
scientist,
do it?
you can't
He was
at all
talking
jump to
about
conclusions.
he's always open to the possibility, but
Because you know
he never thought about
necessarily put your credibility on the line, but you should
aliens,
just
right?
stick
We need
to what
something.
you know.
We need more creative people
Talk
to
about
think
what
about
you
that.
know. I mean, right? We
His,
don't know
his job as
anything
a scientist,
about these
you can't at all jump to
extraterrestrials.
conclusions like that. Because
In
you know,
fact,
that
this
doesn't necessarily
might
put your
be
credibility on the line.
their home.
You just stick to
Imagine.
what you know.
This might be their home.
Talk about what you know.
Maybe we are
We don't know
invasive
anything
species. Maybe
about
we
these
came in 10,000
extraterrestrials.
years ago, but they were already here for 10 millions
that
of years, and
this
we
might
just noticed we're just like bacteria.
be their
living
home.
And
Imagine. This might be
realize
their
that
home.
this could be their home. They could
Maybe
be
we are the invasive species. We
So
came in
if that's the case, that's a little bit better.
10,000 years ago, but they were already
than
here for 10
extraterrestrials.
millions of years. We just
Then
noticed
we
we're
can
just
have
like
some sort of
bacteria
basis
waking up.
interaction, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like
Realize
actually
this could be
thrive
their
through
home.
the
They could be Earthlings too.
being. So if you don't know why I'm making this video right now, it's
If
because
that's the case, that's a
these
little bit
fighter
better, I
pilots
think,
have been for
than
daily,
extraterrestrials.
on a daily basis
Because then we can have some sort of
talking
basis
to
interaction, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like
in
they can actually
communication,
fly
not
through
talking to, but
dimensional
in
beings.
communication
So
through
if
their
you don't know
flight
why I'm
patterns
making this
with
video right now,
this
it's because
unidentified
these fighter
aerial
pilots
phenomenon.
have been
They are
on a daily
chasing them around,
basis
and they are
talking.
one is going faster, the other one's going faster.
In
They're coming
communication,
together.
not talking.
They're chasing each other
through their flight
playing.
patterns
It's a game
with
almost,
this
but it sounds like
unidentified
fighter
aerial
pilot is
phenomenon.
saying. I mean,
They are
the pilot doesn't want
chasing
to
them
give
around.
intentions
They are
to what they're doing.
one is going faster, the other one's going faster.
But that's what
They're coming together.
speculating a little bit.
They're chasing each other. They're playing. It's a game almost,
game
but it
that,
sounds like this
these
fighter pilot is saying. I mean,
aliens are
the
playing.
pilot doesn't want to give any
Human
intentions
fire.
to
This
what
is I mean.
they're doing.
We need to talk about
Rightfully
not
so, but that's what
their American army.
speculating
No,
with. But
the human
could be
army,
yeah,
right? We are Earthlings.
game that
If that's how we can think of ourselves,
aliens are playing with our
we can
human
try to
fire.
solve these global
This is what I mean. Like, we need to
problems,
talk
like global
not
pandemics, global warming.
their American army. No, it's
that nation states
human
were just
army,
not
right?
able
We
to
are
heal from,
Earth.
not able to
That's
deal
how we
with.
can think of
Nation
ourselves.
states,
And perhaps
all
we
of them,
can try to solve these global
all
problems, like
around,
global
are
pandemics,
all
global
a
warming,
wound
stuff that nation states were just not
imperial
able
history.
to,
All
from.
nation states,
not able to
right? The first
deal
nation
with.
state was
Nation states
fighting
all of
against the yoke of
are
the
all
kings.
around
And the
are
first thing
all
the kings
a
around them
wound
did was attack France.
of
Then they created the
imperial
Westphalian
history.
nation state,
All nation states.
and they
The first nation
spread
state
that
was
Westphalianism
France,
throughout
fighting against
the world.
the yoke of
And nations
the
like
kings.
mine, the Gilak,
and the first thing the kings around them did was
and
attack
our brothers,
France.
the Azaris and Armenians,
Then
are
they created the
fighting
Westphalian
right
nation state.
now. And what is
And
that
they
land? Who's
spread that
whose mountain is
Westphalianism
this?
throughout the world.
In that
And
region, in the
nations
Caucasus,
like mine, the
every
Gilak,
mountain belongs to a different tribe.
and our brothers, the Azaris and
So
Armenians, are
creating a
fighting.
nation.
But
If you look at a map,
And
Armenia and Azerbaijan,
what is
you can
that
see
land?
why it's so messed up.
Whose
Because
mountain is this?
the concept of nation state just doesn't go
In
well.
that region, the
The
Caucasus,
history of tribalism,
every
the
mountain
history of
belongs to a
nomadic
different tribe.
tribes, both nomadic
So
and non-nomadic,
creating a
that would
nation,
live there and
if you look at a
negotiate
map,
with one another
Armenia and Azerbaijan,
in
you can see why it's so messed
non-Westphalian
up.
ways.
Because the
Maybe
concept
they
of nation state
contribute or something.
just
I don't know.
doesn't go well
They
with
had
the history
other
of
ways
tribalism, the
dealing
history of
with each other
nomadic
rather than
tribes,
taxation and
both nomadic and
uh,
non-nomadic,
you know,
that would
trying
live
to
there
tax
and
farm
negotiate with
their
one another
population.
in non-Westphalian
We're
ways.
turning everything into
Maybe
tax
they
farms
contribute or
and
something. I don't know.
commodified
They had
centers
other
of growth.
other ways of
Rather, and
dealing with
what I
each
mean
other
by
rather
growth
than
here is
taxation
more the
and
growth of a certain ideology.
you know, trying to tax farm
Ideology of
their
neoliberalism. That's what
population.
growth is all about. Growth
But
is not
we're turning everything into
about
tax farms and
this type of
modified centers of growth. Rather, and what I mean by
is
growth here is
right?
more
What are we growing
growth
towards?
within
What are we
a certain
progressing
ideology.
towards?
The
Right
ideology
now,
of
the only thing that we're
neoliberalism. That's what
progressing
growth
towards
is
is
all
more
about.
production.
Growth is not
Progressing towards more production,
about
towards more plastic consumption,
this type
towards
of
more consumption. We need to move out this
what
ideologies
is
of
growth, right? What are
not
we
the
growing
ideology,
towards?
but
What are we
even stronger
progressing
than that.
towards?
This religion of
Right now, the only thing that we're progressing
capitalism
towards is
that
more production. We're progressing
is
towards more
production
production,
and
towards
consumption
more
and valuing
plastic
people on
consumption,
their
towards more
ability
consumption.
to produce and
We need to move out
exploit
these
surplus
ideologies
capital
of
as being the
not the
main
ideology, but even stronger than that,
arbiter
this
of value,
religion
this
of
market arbiter of
capitalism
value,
that
rather than
makes production
what
and
the Chinese
consumption
have
and
shown,
valuing
which is
people on their
something that's way more
ability to
important
produce
than
and exploit surplus capital as being
the market
main
arbiter of value, which is the nation
arbiter of value, this market
which
arbiter
people
of
are
value,
mixing up
rather
with
than
communism, and they think that that's
what the
communism,
Chinese
but
have
it's
shown,
not. It's
which is
just
something that's
another
way
form
more
of
important.
imperialism, just like
Uh,
just ask all of the no or
the market arbiter of
semi-Chinese
value,
people.
which is the nation state arbiter of value, which people are mixing up with communism. And they think that that's communism, but it's not. It's just another form of imperialism, just ask all of the no or the semi-Chinese people